All right, my name is Tanner Gregory. I am Jesus Christ. It's April 18th, 2026. I just did like a 15-minute long video and it didn't even record. So this one might not even be 3 minutes. I'm not going to put that much energy into it again. Sorry. Okay. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this whole theory of, structure for kids versus that's helicopter parenting to try to, keep them from going out and all this different kind of thing. So, when I was about 10 years old, my mother moved into a neighborhood called Country Place in Carrollton, Texas. Had a little 3-part golf course, had security that patrolled around and all this kind of thing, had ponds and fishing and different kind of things. And I more or less gravitated to a group of people who didn't really live in my neighborhood. It was more the athletic crowd. There was 3 of us that were white, and then one of us was black, and then there was 2 Hispanic guys. Well, there really wasn't many minorities to speak of in the school, so for the fact of half of us being minorities was a little different, but we always got into sports and different kind of things like this. And then one of them, on the other side of the school was the poor area, and there were townhomes over there and different kinds of things like this, but it was more run down, it wasn't nice. And then he had lived over there, but he came over and moved into our neighborhood into a really kind of a nicer house that had a pool in the backyard. He had a big bedroom. And we'd go over there and we'd play, and we had the best time of our lives. You know what I mean? And my mother told me one time, she said, I know you like it that I don't, mess with you, or, I know you like it that I let you, go and do what you want and all this. And I was like, yeah. And she looked at me kind of like, yeah, but, it's still questionable, you know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is that time of our lives, one of my friends, the one who went on to become a Major League Baseball player, we were hanging out when we were like 18 years old. We didn't hang out much, but he came over and hung out with me a couple times, and he said those were seriously some good times. You know what I mean? Like those were just extremely good times. Well, I won't say it was like good times period, because all of our parents were like addicted to drugs or alcoholic or abusive, or there was something that wasn't quite right. You know what I mean? But for the most part, they weren't lording over us and all this kind of thing. And we got away with a lot. We like to crack up. We like to, go and do different things around the neighborhood and different kind of things. But when I got into the 6th grade, my grades I basically scraped by in the 5th grade, but once I got into the 6th grade, my grades were so terribly bad, like 20, like I was getting a 20, and or like a 25 or a 15 or something like that, something unbelievably ridiculously bad. And I'd always been drawn to the structure of my dad's house. My parents were divorced, but my dad lived on the other side of town with his wife, and she had a couple kids. And then like at 5 o'clock, like clockwork, every day, it was time to do homework. They did their homework, and then they were expected to make good grades. On Friday, they did pizza. It was always a very structured routine. I remember thinking to myself, I just wish I had that structure. You know what I mean? Like I wish I had something like that in my life. And so I told my mother, I said, I'm going to move. I said, I want to move in with my dad. And she threatened to commit suicide, and then said she wouldn't be able to get by without the child support money. And then so I said, well, if I can get you the child support money, will you not kill yourself? And she was like, yes. So anyways, I left and went over to live with them. And then once I got over to my dad's house, that was a little bit of a different environment. The classroom was like 90% black, because my dad had moved into an industrial park area for his business. And so therefore we were surrounded by all this Section 8 housing. But I ended up getting along with those kids really well, like in terms of basketball and stuff like that, because my friend had a basketball hoop behind his house, and we played basketball all the time. And they used to call me Reggie Miller, because I was so good at making the shot. I don't know how I got to be so good. I didn't practice, I just played. That was just from the amount of time that I spent playing basketball with my friends that I got so good that they call me Reggie Miller. But that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is it was a we were all into sports, we were all into shoes, we were all into jerseys, we were all into rap music, and you know, it's, I don't know how to explain it, but there was so many funny jokes that we cracked. You know, I mean, one time my friend, he went into the closet and then he came out with a pair of pliers tangled up in his pubic hair. And he was going, we were just sitting there playing video games, and all of a sudden I hear this motherfucker going, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. I turned around and looked, but it was literally hilarious. I saw this, and I was like, oh my God. We were like, what the fuck? But it was always something, we had so much fun. It was always something funny. It was always something fun all the time, you know what I mean? My grades came up dramatically, you know. I was making straight A's, you know. And I can remember like the feeling of it, like the feeling of, you know, like I got my shit in order. You know what I mean? Like my life is going in a positive direction. I know my life is going in a positive direction. I'm not going to wind up scraping by, because when I had lived with my mother, there was times where it was the sting of poverty. You know what I mean? Like my friends were wearing Nikes to school and starter jerseys and different kind of things like this, and I couldn't even get her to buy me like something from Walmart. You know what I mean? Or I was wearing Payless shoes to school. You know what I mean? And they weren't. You know. So I think I had an understanding within my mind of, you know, I don't want to be like that in life. I don't want to wind up like that. I want to wind up like that. You know what I mean? Because I remember thinking in the 6th grade, I would think of things like, oh, well, I want to be a businessman. Like, I'm going to be a successful businessman when I get older, and different kinds of things like this. The only problem was that I got incredibly, even at 12 years old, got incredibly depressed. Depressed that I wasn't able to be around my friends, because, see, my mother wasn't really a part of my life. I mean, she was there, but not really. So my friends had become like my family, you know what I mean? And then I wanted to go back over there where my friends were at, and so I actually ended up moving myself back over with my mother because I couldn't deal with it anymore. The depression was very bad. And even at 12 years old, it's just crazy for a 12-year-old kid to be dealing with so much depression, you know. But it just didn't work out, you know. Once I got into middle school, your hormones kick in. There's a lot more competition for popularity. I wound up with this group of people that was mostly black and Hispanic athletes, like the strongest kids in school, period. And there was a couple of white guys. One of them, the coach said, you know, you're the best football player we have on our team, but you're just not interested. It was just kind of a wacky mindset, like that kid in particular ended up getting in trouble and kicked out of high school for beating the hell out of somebody and then putting his head in the toilet and smashing the toilet seat on his head. It wasn't like a normal group of people. There was a kid in there who was our best defensive player, and he shaved his head he was white. He shaved his head all the way around on the side, and then his hair was extremely long on top, and he would take gel and just comb it forward, and it would come all the way down to his eyes. So it wasn't like a normal group of people. And basically what I'm trying to say is that I was hanging out with popular kids. You know what I mean? Still, I mean, even though that was the group I wound up, but the other group was, they call themselves the preps. And they dress like a 35-year-old man on a golf course, you know, wearing khaki shorts. And I think it was just this whole thing, like, resist this burden of culture, of gangsterism and all this kind of stuff by running in the opposite direction. I was drawn to that, but I just could never fit in with them. But basically what I'm saying is this, you know, when I think about it, I think back on this quite a bit. And when I think back on it, what I think is, you know, I wish that I had stayed with that mindset. I wish that there was somehow that I could have stayed with that routine, you know, into middle school and high school, because it's just, if you have self-esteem from taking care of your schoolwork and having a purpose and all this kind of thing, you can't become, I mean, people will be drawn to you anyway. It's not all about being popular. If you have like self-esteem, people will come to you anyways. You know what I mean? But if you don't, and then your whole purpose is trying to become popular in an increasingly competitive environment, all this kind of stuff, it's just setting yourself up for disappointment, you know? And I honestly know that I just could have been so much happier in life if there was some way that even once I moved back with my mom, or if I just hadn't moved back with my mom and just remained with that structure in my life, I would have remained having a sense of purpose in life that defied everything. You know what I mean? Like, you might be popular this week, you might be unpopular next week. That's what a lot of kids go through. It seems like everybody's nice to me this week, and then next week nobody wants to be nice to me. Their whole idea, their whole identity is wrapped up. By the time they're 13, is all they think about is, what do other people think of me? That's all they think of. You know, I mean, predominantly that's one of the things that they think about, and it's just, I think I've already said what I have to say, but what I'm trying to say is that I honestly feel that that would have been the case. Now, even with that being said, we had some seriously good times. I mean, there was a joke that one of my friends told one time where he was like talking about fighting with a musket. Like if he had to defend himself with a musket, it was like push it down in there and then shoot and then get the ball and pour it in there, and it was like hilarious shit all the time. You know, so I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, to be honest with you. I think I'm just telling you my story and give you an understanding of what it is that I think with regards to how is that supposed to work, or is it a helicopter parent to be having structure in a kid's life, or where do you draw the line? I don't know, but I know that for me personally, I'm glad that I had those experiences. I'm glad more than anything that I had fun. I kind of wish that it could have worked out where I had those experiences, I had that much fun, and then transitioned into a structured environment and just stayed in it rather than going back, But anyways, that's all I have.